Imagine driving a car you have known intimately for like 40 years. You know its quirks, its turning radius, exactly how much pressure to put on the gas pedal.
Right, you have total muscle memory for it.
Exactly. But then one morning you press the brake and the horn blares, or you turn the steering wheel to the left and the car accelerates to the right, and the dashboard is just, flashing warning lights you have never seen before.
I mean, if that happened in real life, you would immediately pull over. You would assume the car's internal computer was completely fried, or, well, you'd question your own grip on reality.
Yeah, and for millions of women entering their 40s and 50s, that car is their own brain. You are cruising along, handling your career, your family, your life, and suddenly you are overwhelmed by an emotion that feels completely alien.
It really does feel alien, and it's terrifying.
It is. So today we are taking a deep dive into an incredibly important question, one that affects millions but is just rarely talked about openly. We are asking, can the menopause transition actually cause severe mood swings and sudden blinding rage?
It is a question shrouded in an immense amount of stigma, honestly. But the science we are analyzing today paints a very clear, very biological picture.
Which is so validating.
Oh, absolutely. Because what happens in the brain during menopause is fundamentally a neurological event. It is every bit as much neurological as it is reproductive.
To get to the bottom of this, we are pulling from a massive stack of research today. We have got clinical guidelines from the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, ADZ, and the British Menopause Society.
Both of which are gold standards for this kind of clinical data.
Right, and we are also looking at cutting-edge neurobiology research from Dr. Lisa Mosconi on estrogen receptors in the brain. Plus, we are bringing in clinical data surrounding PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and severe mental health during the menopausal transition.
The breadth of this data is critical. It takes us completely out of the realm of, this is just a phase, and plants us firmly in the realm of neurology and endocrinology. We're looking at physical, measurable changes in brain chemistry.
So if you are listening to this right now, and you have ever felt completely out of control or inexplicably angry or blinded by sudden rage during midlife, here is the ultimate takeaway for you right up front. It is absolutely not all in your head.
Well, actually, it is in your head, but not in the way people mean.
Fair point. It is in your physical brain. It is a biological, chemical, and structural remodeling of your brain.
Exactly. And to understand where that rage comes from, we first have to understand the baseline neurological changes that are occurring.
Right. We have to move past this vague, catch-all idea of just, like, hormone changes.
Yeah, we have to look at the specific neurobiology of estrogen. Because estrogen doesn't just stay in the reproductive system.
We know it's not just a reproductive hormone, but seeing Dr. Lisa Mosconi map it out as a master neuromodulator, it just completely changes how we should look at a woman's cognitive baseline.
It really does. Your brain is packed with estrogen receptors. Specifically, there's estrogen receptor alpha and estrogen receptor beta.
And they are all over the place, right?
They are. But they are concentrated heavily in areas like the hippocampus, which handles memory, and the amygdala.
And the amygdala is the emotional processing center, right?
Exactly. So estrogen is essentially the fuel that helps regulate mood, memory, and cognitive function. It literally dictates how brain cells communicate with each other.
I want to focus on that structural change because Mosconi's research maps this out so brilliantly. As estrogen drops during the perimenopause transition, the brain essentially undergoes a structural renovation.
That's a great way to put it. Her team actually found that the density of estrogen receptors increases in certain areas.
Wait, increases? If estrogen is dropping, why are the receptors increasing?
Well, the brain is attempting to adapt to a sudden, drastic lack of fuel. They found more receptors popping up in the thalamus, which is linked to depressed mood, and the prefrontal cortex.
Okay, let's unpack this because trying to visualize receptor density can get a bit abstract.
It can, yeah.
So think of estrogen as your brain's Wi-Fi signal. For decades, you have had a strong, perfect connection. But during perimenopause, that signal starts dropping. It gets patchy.
Right, the signal is fading.
So the brain's response is to panic and throw up dozens of new routers. And those routers are the new estrogen receptors in the thalamus and prefrontal cortex. It is desperately trying to catch whatever faint Wi-Fi signal is left.
I love that analogy. That is exactly what is happening structurally.
But if the wiring is just being updated, if the network is just trying to boost the signal, why does it feel like a total explosive short circuit? Why the sudden rage?
What's fascinating here is that the brain's biological threshold for emotional stability has been drastically lowered in the process. When estrogen drops, it takes a whole host of neurotransmitters down with it.
Like serotonin, right?
Yes, estrogen directly promotes the production of serotonin, our primary feel-good hormone, and it impacts dopamine, which drives our motivation and reward system.
And GABA, too. We can't forget GABA.
Right, GABA is huge. It is the brain's primary calming anti-anxiety system. So the brain is starved for the neuromodulator it has relied on to keep the peace.
Wow. So without adequate serotonin and GABA acting as, like, the brain's shock absorbers, minor frustrations that you used to just brush off suddenly register as 5 alarm fires.
Precisely. This structural and chemical vulnerability is why women in perimenopause are actually 40% more likely to experience clinical depressive symptoms compared to premenopausal women.
40%. That is a massive structural
It
vulnerability.
is staggering when you look at the raw data.
So we have got this unstable network in the brain. Serotonin is dropping, GABA is depleted. But I want to trace the exact mechanism here.
Sure.
How does that specific chemical depletion translate to rage? Because it is often a very specific kind of anger. It's usually directed at a partner or coworkers. It feels hot and immediate.
Well, when serotonin and GABA retreat, other hormones rush in to fill the void. Specifically, cortisol.
The stress hormone.
Exactly, the body's primary stress hormone. Cortisol operates inversely to estrogen. So as your estrogen drops, your cortisol levels naturally rise.
So your baseline of stress is just fundamentally elevated.
Yes. And there is a fascinating and honestly kind of terrifying mechanical link with hot flashes here.
Oh, I read this part of the sources. It says cortisol actually spikes 15 minutes after a hot flash occurs.
Yes. Think about what a hot flash is. It is essentially a thermoregulatory glitch in the hypothalamus.
So the brain mistakenly thinks the body is overheating.
Right, so it triggers a massive physiological response to cool down. But that glitch also sends a shock wave through the nervous system. The subsequent cortisol spike triggers a literal fight or flight response.
Fight or flight. So your body chemically believes it is under physical attack.
Exactly. And in a modern context, you can't exactly take flight from a staff meeting or, your own living room.
So that response often manifests as the fight part.
Yes. That translates directly to anger, hostility, or sudden rage.
That makes so much sense. And then you add the blood sugar mechanism to the mix.
Oh, the blood sugar piece is crucial.
Because the sources point out that estrogen helps maintain insulin sensitivity. And I was looking at how dropping estrogen causes that control to just get sloppy.
It does. Without estrogen optimizing how cells transport and absorb glucose, the body overproduces insulin to compensate.
Which leads to reactive hypoglycemia.
Right, because the body overcompensates with insulin, your blood sugar essentially crashes a few hours after eating.
And the brain is uniquely sensitive to glucose drops, isn't it?
Very sensitive. When it senses starvation, it triggers even more adrenaline and cortisol to force the liver to release stored sugar.
So you are not just irritated, you are biologically profoundly hangry, and it's driven by an adrenaline surge.
You are clinically hangry, yes. And up to 70% of women report irritability as their primary perimenopause mood complaint.
70%.
Yeah.
And the data shows it is frequently directed at husbands or partners.
Which psychologically happens because of proximity and emotional safety. You are more likely to express volatile emotions around the people you subconsciously feel won't abandon you.
So it is a perfect storm. Heightened stress response, crashing blood sugar, and zero neurological shock absorbers to cushion the blow.
It really is the perfect storm.
But I have to challenge this premise just a bit.
Yeah.
Because midlife rage, well, isn't a lot of this just caused by the reality of life at that age?
How do you mean?
Well, you are in your late 40s or 50s. You might be caring for aging parents, dealing with hormonal teenagers, hitting the peak stress years of your career. How much of this is a biological brain remodel, and how much is just a woman finally being completely fed up with the mental load?
That is a really important point. We absolutely must validate the psychosocial stressors because they are immense. The aging parents, the teenagers, the career pressure, those are real heavy environmental triggers.
Right, they aren't in your head.
No, they are very real. But the key to the neurobiology we are discussing is that the biological threshold for dealing with those triggers has vanished.
Ah, because of the depleted GABA.
Exactly. Your brain's natural anxiety reducer is physically reduced. It is not that the environmental stressors aren't real or valid. It is that the neurological buffer you used to rely on to handle them without breaking down has been structurally removed.
The threshold is just gone.
Wow.
Now, we have focused heavily on estrogen as the missing buffer, but the sources dive deep into the other major player in the cycle, which is progesterone.
Yes, progesterone is vital here.
And progesterone is famous in the wellness space as the calming hormone. It is supposed to be the relaxing counterweight to estrogen.
Supposed to be, yes.
So why do so many women report feeling incredibly anxious or even enraged when progesterone is present?
This is where the neurobiology gets incredibly complex, and it completely shifts how we understand female mental health.
Okay, lay it on me.
After you ovulate, your body produces progesterone. Your body then metabolizes that progesterone into a specific neurosteroid called allopregnanolone.
Let's call it allo for short so we don't trip over that word.
Good idea. Allo. So allo is the end product that actually interacts with the brain.
Got it.
Normally, allo binds to the GABA receptors in the brain to boost that calming signal we just talked about. It acts almost identically to how an anti-anxiety medication works. It soothes the central nervous system.
But researchers at Umeå University in Sweden found something different, right?
They made a groundbreaking discovery regarding women with PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder. They found that in certain brains, there is a paradoxical reaction to allo.
I am stuck on this allo concept. Because if the body produces a chemical specifically designed to calm the brain down, what is physically breaking in the perimenopausal brain that turns a sedative into a stimulant?
The researchers discovered that the GABA-A receptors in these women actually change their physical conformation, their shape.
Wait, the physical shape of the receptor changes.
Yes. So when allo binds to this altered receptor, instead of opening the ion channel to inhibit anxiety and calm the brain, it has the exact opposite effect.
It acts as an agitator.
Exactly. The brain's emotional alarm system, the amygdala, fires harder in response to the very chemical that is supposed to soothe it.
That is wild.
It triggers severe anxiety, deep depression, and sudden rage.
Here is where it gets really interesting. Because the analogy the sources draw is just perfect.
The sleeping pill analogy.
Yeah, it is like you take a heavy sleeping pill, fully expecting to be knocked out for a solid 8 hours.
Right.
But instead, because your receptors are flipped, the pill acts like a quadruple shot of espresso. And you are suddenly deep cleaning your kitchen at 3 a.m. with a toothbrush, just vibrating with anxiety.
That is a highly accurate representation of the internal state. And this brings us right to the perimenopause connection.
Because of the erratic cycles.
Yes. During perimenopause, ovulation becomes highly erratic. You no longer have smooth, predictable 28-day cycles. You start experiencing what are called loop cycles.
Meaning abrupt spikes and crashes.
Abrupt, unpredictable spikes and sudden, steep crashes in progesterone.
And because the progesterone is spiking erratically, those allo fluctuations are repeatedly activating this paradoxical brain circuitry.
Precisely. For a woman with this specific neurological sensitivity, perimenopause feels like constant, unrelenting PMDD.
So the hormonal thermostat is just broken, and the emotional temperature climbs completely unchecked, seemingly at random.
This raises an important question about how we view hormone imbalances in general medicine.
Because the narrative is always like, oh, your estrogen is too low or your progesterone too high. It is constantly framed as a volume problem.
That is the critical paradigm shift the Umeå University data provides. It is not a problem of having too much or too little hormone.
So a blood test might show a woman's hormone levels are perfectly normal for her age bracket.
Exactly. The issue is a neurological sensitivity to the fluctuation itself. The brain is overreacting to the roller coaster ride, the steep drops and sudden climbs, not the absolute height of the trek.
Man, if a woman's brain is having this wild paradoxical reaction to her own hormones, but a doctor only looks at her mood swings without tracking her cycle or understanding the fluctuation, it is no wonder they are getting the wrong diagnosis.
It leads directly into the clinical data regarding severe mental illness during this transition. And the reality is incredibly grim.
It really is.
Menopausal depression often does not look like classic major depressive disorder. Because of those loop cycles, a woman might feel profoundly, overwhelmingly depressed or completely consumed by rage for 3 days.
And then, as her hormones shift again, she feels totally fine the next week.
Right. To a physician untrained in the nuances of menopausal neurology, this erratic presentation looks exactly like rapid cycling bipolar disorder.
That misdiagnosis rate is staggering, and the clinical data highlights the absolute tragedy of missing this connection. Suicide rates for women in the United States and Australia actually peak between the ages of 45 and 64.
Which is the exact window of the menopausal transition and the chaotic brain remodeling we are discussing.
is a devastating statistic. It just underscores the severity of the biological shift.
And the standard protocol when a woman in her late 40s goes to her primary care doctor and says, I'm raging, I'm crying, I can't cope, it is almost always to prescribe an antidepressant, specifically an SSRI.
But if the root cause is a fluctuating hormone or a paradoxical reaction to allo, an SSRI isn't addressing the actual mechanism, is it?
Antidepressants can be helpful for some specific symptoms, certainly, but they are frequently overprescribed as a first-line defense for women in their 40s and 50s.
Because they are attempting to artificially boost serotonin without addressing why the serotonin dropped in the first place.
Exactly, or without fixing the erratic hormone fluctuations causing the receptor chaos. This is why hormone replacement therapy, or HRT, is highly effective at stabilizing these specific mood fluctuations.
The sources mentioned a landmark study out of Cambridge University on this.
Yes, they found that HRT led to a significant 44% decline in depression for perimenopausal and menopausal women.
44% is huge. But the British Menopause Society guidelines are very clear that HRT requires a highly nuanced approach. It is not a one-size-fits-all magic wand.
The delivery method and the specific type of hormone matter immensely. The guidelines note that transdermal estradiol, meaning a patch, gel, or spray that is absorbed through the skin, avoids the first-pass metabolism in the liver.
So that drastically reduces the risks of blood clots and strokes that historically were associated with older oral estrogen pills.
Correct. And the type of progesterone used to protect the uterine lining matters just as much.
Especially regarding the breast cancer risk that everyone worries about, right?
Yes. Large observational data now suggests that micronized progesterone, which is body identical, carries a significantly lower breast cancer risk compared to older synthetic progestins.
But we also must acknowledge that for women with a history of hormone-sensitive breast cancer, systemic HRT is generally contraindicated.
We do.
I want to spend a moment on those women, because they are dealing with this exact same brain remodel, often triggered abruptly and aggressively by their cancer treatments or surgical menopause.
It's a very sudden drop for them.
Right. So if they cannot use transdermal estradiol or micronized progesterone, how do they stabilize the network?
For those women, the clinical focus shifts to non-hormonal evidence-based interventions. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, has been shown to be highly effective.
With the mood swings.
For managing the psychological impacts, yes. But CBT actually reduces the severity of hot flashes, too.
Wait, therapy can stop a physical hot flash?
It reduces the severity and the distress associated with them. And lifestyle modifications become paramount. Specifically, dietary changes to actively manage the reactive hypoglycemia and blood sugar crashing we discussed earlier.
Keeping the hangry response at bay.
Exactly. If you can keep the glucose stable, you prevent the adrenaline and cortisol spikes that trigger the rage.
So what does this all mean for the person listening right now? The person who is sitting in their car or walking their dog, feeling like they are fundamentally losing their mind.
It means you must advocate for yourself using the specific vocabulary.
Yes, exactly.
When you go to your doctor, you can explicitly discuss transdermal estradiol or ask about stabilizing hormone fluctuations rather than just treating the mood symptoms in isolation.
Because often the medical system tries to separate them, treating the mental health with SSRIs while waiting for the menopause to just pass.
But the best physical and mental outcomes occur when we stabilize the hormonal foundation while supporting the psychological symptoms. You do not have to white-knuckle your way through a neurological renovation.
You really don't. It is not a character flaw. It is not a breakdown. It is a profound, biologically driven response to shifting estrogen, spiking cortisol, blood sugar crashes, and paradoxical LO reactions.
Your brain is quite literally under construction.
It is noisy, it is messy, and the metaphorical Wi-Fi is constantly dropping, but you have the absolute right to ask for the tools to manage it.
And it is crucial to remember that construction projects eventually end.
Thank goodness for that.
The brain does establish a new baseline.
Which leads to a fascinating point from Dr. Mosconi's research about what happens when the dust settles.
Yes.
Once this chaotic remodeling project is finished, and the brain enters postmenopause and adapts to its new, low estrogen environment, what actually happens to a woman's cognitive baseline?
This is perhaps the most uplifting revelation in the neurobiological data. The postmenopausal brain is actually associated with higher emotional and cognitive empathy.
I find that incredible. After all the rage and emotional volatility, the endpoint is increased empathy.
It is because the brain has successfully rewired itself. The areas of the brain responsible for perspective taking and emotional regulation establish a new, stable equilibrium.
Wow.
The ultimate destination of this turbulent transition is often a deeper, clearer understanding of others' motivations and a profound, hard-won sense of self-compassion. The empathy deepens as the brain settles into its new structure.
So you go through the fire, your dashboard lights are flashing, the car feels like it is driving itself off a cliff.
Yeah.
But when the smoke clears, you haven't lost your mind.
Not at all.
You have actually gained a deeper understanding of the human experience.
It is a neurological upgrade, even if the installation process is deeply uncomfortable and fundamentally disruptive.
A neurological upgrade. I love that. So, to you listening, the next time you feel that sudden surge of rage or an inexplicable mood swing, remember, you are not going crazy.
Yeah.
Your brain is just rewiring the network.
Very well said.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. Keep asking the hard questions, keep advocating for your health using the science we explored, and we will catch you next time.